Hey guys, welcome to the channel, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really does help the channel out with the YouTube algorithm, and obviously helps the channel grow and then allows me to make more of these videos for you guys. So today we're going to be comparing these three gauges. We've got the LEZYNE, we've got the Blackburn honest gauge, and we've got the TOPEAK SmartGauge D2. So let's do this thing. So guys, before I start the video, a little disclaimer. I bought all three of these gauges with my own money, so the opinions are my own. And I think the idea of this video is if you're looking for a gauge and you've got a choice between these three gauges, maybe this will help you decide which one you should get. Obviously, I've got my own preference, and let's see what that is. So let's head over to the workbench and have a closer look. Okay, so the three gauges, if we have a closer look at them: TOPEAK, Blackburn, LEZYNE. These are the three gauges. This is the newest gauge that I've got. This is the oldest gauge I've got, and obviously that's what gauge I got in the middle. You can see the difference in size to each of them. This is obviously the most narrow, sleek one. This one's a bit of a fat one, and this one is sort of in between the two. This one, from an ergonomic point of view, I mean that fits very nicely in the hand. It's got the button there to bleed air off if you want to. This one is very narrow. It's actually a little bit uncomfortable to hold in your hand like that, but obviously you're not going to be walking around holding it in your hand, so I don't know if this is really a decision as to why or which is going to be the one I prefer. And then this one, once again, it is in the middle, but if I had to feel them weight-wise, this feels definitely heavier than all of them. And from a perspective of which one feels more expensive, bearing in mind that all basically cost the same price, I would say it would be between the TOPEAK and the LEZYNE. The Blackburn does have a bit of a plasticky, cheapy feeling to it. The next difference between them is this uses the same battery as this, which is, I've got one of the batteries over here. It's that CR2032 battery. And this one over here uses a completely different battery, which is a CR1220 battery. If I have to turn them on, this one I just turn on there by pressing the button there. It tells you the pressure, which you can now, which is 0, but the measurement type, PSI, you just press that button over there, it goes to bar 0.0, and oh, it's got another reading there as well, which I completely forgot about, kilograms per centimeter squared. So this has got an additional measurement that these two do not. It also has this timing feature here, which can hold it, and then I think you can turn it on and off by pushing this button there, which you can do. You can swap easily between Presta and Schrader by just moving this plastic button back and forth, which changes the way that works over there. But as I only use Presta, we'll leave it on that. Moving over to the Blackburn, it also just turns on by pressing the button. It's currently, as you can see, it's a little bit more difficult to actually see this display, and it's reading PSI. Press it once, it goes to bar, and then back to PSI. So this one only reads PSI and bar. But interestingly enough, this one in the PSI setting, it's got 0.0. In the bar, it's got 0.00. So this gives you an indication that maybe this can be a little bit more accurate if you're reading in bar or PSI, whereas the other two, or these two, only read PSI to the, not to the decimal point, basically just to the integer value, which is, there's no decimal point afterwards. And then the LEZYNE, you hold the button down. It's a lot harder or more difficult to press this button to get it on. Once it's on, it tells you the measurement that it's busy reading in. I'll just move it down a bit like that so that you can see it's already switched off again. I see. There it goes on. PSI, I can press it again, it goes to bar, which is 0.0. And then it gives you the battery indication. So, which is an irritating thing about this. You see now it's not flickering anymore, which is a little bit puzzling with this thing. It tells you the battery's flat 1 minute, and the next minute it's not. So all of these have a button over here to bleed air out. There and there and there, so they're all the same there. They can all switch between Schrader and Presta. This one just turns out and goes back in. But let's head over to the bicycle, take a couple of measurements, and I'll show you the difference between the three and how they work. Okay, so starting with the LEZYNE one, it is on at the moment, set to bar, so I'm just going to switch that to PSI, like so. Just hold it onto the valve, like so, and then there we go, 2 or 20 PSI, it's set to there. And now you'll notice there's no audio indication that it has locked onto the pressure, and it doesn't keep the pressure on the, or display the pressure onto the LCD display. It displays it, doesn't give you an audible tone that it's actually got the pressure, it's locked onto it. And once you take it off the valve, it lasts only about 2 seconds and then it resets. Looking at the Blackburn, we'll turn it on, make sure it's on PSI. Same thing here. So the difference there is you heard a bit of a beep sound. It's now displaying the actual value, which is also 20 PSI, so it's 100% correct, excepting there's a decimal place there which is not visible on the LEZYNE one, and it still displays the pressure. Even now it'll display this pressure until the gauge switches off, which is actually a very handy feature. Okay, looking at the last gauge now, the TOPEAK, we'll turn that on, set to PSI. Once again it gives a reading, but interestingly enough, this is my oldest gauge, so I don't know if it's faulty or not, but this only reads 17 PSI, whereas the other two read 20 PSI. So that's an interesting deviation from the other two. It also gives, as you could hear, an audible indication that it's locked onto the pressure, and that pressure remains there until the unit actually switches off. So guys, that's a close look at these three gauges next to each other and comparing them and seeing exactly what the differences are. And as you can see, the odd one out here is this LEZYNE one. It doesn't give you an audible tone. It doesn't lock on to the actual pressure. You just got to watch it. Okay, it's basically stabilized. That's the pressure. These other two sort of lock onto a pressure. It's stable now. It makes an audible tone. It locks that in. You take it off. You can come back in a few seconds time. It'll still show you the pressure that it basically read the last time that it took the pressure. So another point here is that this one obviously turns 360 degrees. These two don't, only 180. But for me personally, I like the audible tone. I like the fact that it locks on. It tells you now that it's stabilized the pressure. It's locked on. It is obviously a bit worrying that these two show 20 PSI and this one shows 17 PSI. But at the end of the day, if you're only using this one, for example, I don't think it really matters, because if this is your reality or your expectation of, let's say, a reading, let's say 20 psi, you know how hard the tyre is. So if it reads 20 psi, you're going to be setting it to that pressure that you're expecting every time. If you're expecting these two and you set it to 20, well, it's going to be obviously a little bit lower, this 20. It's going to read 20 when this one's saying it's actually only 17. It doesn't matter, like I say, it depends on what you're expecting to be 20 and how you feel the 20 psi pressure. So I don't think that's a big thing unless you're busy doing some sort of study that requires 100% accuracy, because I can't actually tell you which one is correct. Obviously the fact that both of these read 20 gives me an indication that there is probably something wrong with this gauge. But I'm going to have to rule the LEZYNE out. I'm actually a little bit disappointed in this gauge. It's obviously my only opinion. You guys can have your own opinion. I'd love to hear it in the comments below which one you prefer. But I don't like the way it doesn't give you an audible tone, it doesn't lock on, and it doesn't keep the pressure reading. It basically just, after 2 seconds, it's gone and you must retake it. I don't like that. The second thing I don't like is the way it reads out the pressure. In other words, it's vertically and the other two are horizontally, which is more familiar to myself, and yeah, I prefer that. So then if I have to look at these two, which of these two would I get? The Blackburn, I think it's a good gauge. It feels a bit cheap to me in the hand, although it does do the job well, and it has done the job well, and is actually a very reliable pressure gauge. I, at the end of the day, prefer this gauge, and I'll probably get another one of these gauges if I think this one's a bit faulty. So now that I've done this comparison, I think I'm going to be getting another one of these. It feels like a premium product in your hand. I like the LCD display. It's large, clear, audible tone, keeps the reading, and you got that extra setting that I even forgot about, that extra pressure readout, which I'll never use because I only use PSI, but it's got it if you need it. There it is. So this is my pick of the three. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think and which one you'd prefer. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. So guys, that's it. And thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.